My name is Norbert. I'm the Computer Operations Manager for DCD. I've been working for Division of Community Development since about 1998. Back in 1999, the then KLCBK administration, they approached the Gates Foundation wanting to participate in a program that the Gates Foundation was doing with libraries across the United States. And based on those efforts, the Gates Foundation was able to develop a special program for Native Americans called the Native Americans Access to Technology Program. And through efforts working with the Gates Foundation and the states, we were able to get the chapters recognized as libraries for the purpose of the grant. They were, because they're the places in the communities where most of the community information is stored. So they're basically libraries. I mean, even though it's not in the same sense as libraries on the outside, they're the libraries for our communities. So, and based on that, the Gates Foundation made available a grant to the chapters to provide anywhere from 2 to 4 computers per chapter, and they also offered internet access through satellite connectivity, because at the time the infrastructure on the Navajo Nation wasn't built out enough to support high-speed broadband. So since that time, the Gates Foundation has made several grants to the Navajo Nation. There was something called a Phase 2 grant, which provided 7 locations on the Navajo Nation with computer labs of 10 to 12 additional computers that could be set up as a computer lab for the communities. We work with the Gates Foundation to also set those up. And really, the Division of Community Development basically took on this all these grants, the responsibility for all these grants, working with Gates Foundation to make sure that the intents of the grant were honored and fulfilled. So over the years, we've been able to do that, and with this latest, there's a third grant called which they call the closeout grant, because they had done so much for the Navajo Nation, and they wanted to make these programs sustainable, so they provided this last grant to provide the sustainability portion of it, to really augment our tech support activities of the chapters with funding support for computer software, for training, for the tech support. Really on the tech support side, they wanted to provide some type of support for software and to help the chapters and to help the technical support efforts out there. So we were able to use those funding sources, to provide additional software, to be available to the chapters. And that included, this SAS Tracker that we just did, because the chapters. We noticed that a lot of the times the chapters really ask about questions related to the SAS packets that they have processed or going through the system, being processed, as well as so the portal and certain other things, the web portal where chapters can use their websites to provide information to the community and to others. So we set those up using those support funds. Then there was another grant called the PACHUG Replacement Grant that was put out in 2007 to replace all those originally granted computers back in 2000. We worked with the Gates Foundation to replace every single one of those computers that were out there, with new ones. This was back in 2007, 2008. So this, this latest grant, that was completed and finished, but the support, the PAC-Hug support grant, continued, and we basically finally closed that out. We expended all the funds, and we closed that out just recently. Well, the next step is to continue working with the chapters and to really make sure, because Division of Community Development has limited resources, we don't have these grants anymore, and we've been looking for other grants. So there's a couple of things we're doing. We're continuing to look for additional grants to help with this effort. Right now, the federal grants are, they're not like they used to be in the early 2000s, where there was an abundance of grant opportunities. Now, with the budget deficits and all this stuff's going on, it's really hard to find funding. But we're still looking, and we're applying for grants whenever possible. And then also we're working with the chapters to transition over a lot of the support for these PAC-Hug devices or these computers, and we're trying to get them to take more responsibility, ownership of all these devices, so that they can find the funding to upgrade those machines and to keep the public access computing efforts going in their communities. And some chapters have really taken ownership of that, and they've done tremendous things. They've applied for grants. They've purchased new computers. They've hired personnel to look after their computer labs and things like that. On their own, which is great. We want more chapters to do that, to really run with these early efforts that DCD initiated. Well, the first computers that I know, like we said, for the public access were these Gates granted ones back in 2000, and before then, the chapters had their own computers, the administrative computers, but those are just for the two employees at the chapter. But for the public, the Gates Foundation really were the ones that started off the public access computing efforts. And on the New Mexico side, there were some early efforts from the state library to provide computers and dial-up internet service back in the late 90s. But but that was for a certain portion of the Navajo Nation. A few chapters received that. But for the entire Navajo Nation, the Gates Foundation was really the major one that we did. Right now, we have our own local area network, and we have some servers and routers and all those that we control. But we switched to the DIT, the fiber infrastructure, and are now utilizing their internet connection for most of our. We still have backups. We have a DSL backup in case that network ever goes down. That's happened a few times, where we had to switch over to DSL. And at the chapter level, we continue to keep pushing for some type of a unified Navajo Nation network that will tie all these chapters together to a common network. But the infrastructure still isn't there. So the closest thing we have that we've had for the past few years is DSL. Getting everyone connected to the internet through DSL, and then so really that's been the strategy since 1999. Is we knew going forward that there wasn't this unified infrastructure that throughout the Navajo Nation for networking and broadband and all that, but we knew that we could provide a lot of communication and get a lot of the same types of services available to the chapters through the web, the World Wide Web, through the internet. And as long as we can get the chapters connected up to the internet, we have some services out there on the internet. I guess the term these days is the cloud. That's what they call it, cloud services. So those types of services, internet-based web and file services, which were based, through some web servers that we had hosted, and through that, the chapters were able to get their email addresses, set up their email accounts, their own websites. Division, all the departments have their websites, and then we started working on other tools that the chapters could use, to really take advantage of the resources that the internet has to offer. We have the portal, then we started doing some e-government applications, which eventually became known as the WIN system. It's a suite of different web applications that work together. They're integrated, so we have several of those, which includes the web portal that we built, the budget web application, which we've been using for several years now, to develop budgets online, have chapters submit their budgets online, and then the ICIP, which helps the chapters plan for their infrastructure development, and then related to that is the project authorization, which helps track funding for these infrastructure projects that the chapters initiate. And then the third part to that is project administration, which helps follow the progress of construction projects where they're actually implemented. The funding is spent, and contractors build these infrastructures. So those types of things. And then now the latest one is this SAS Tracker, which helps us to get a better idea of where SAS packets are, and follow them very closely, to make sure that, because one of the biggest complaints that we get is that the SAS process takes so long, and this tool helps us to closely track that and make sure that the SAS packets are being processed as quickly as possible. So that's that's where we're at with the networking infrastructure. Well, I think that depending on how the funding goes, I think we have some pretty good tools that we've initiated, and I think the next several years we'll probably really mature those tools, to make sure that that all the tools offer all the functionality that the chapters need, and that they work reliably, and that they all work together, comprehensively. And I think for now, the set of tools that we have is pretty good. I mean, you can try to automate just about everything, but at some point you have to take a look back and say, well, can we afford that? The technology can do all these wonderful things, but you have to look back at the costs and see what other things. You really have to prioritize what's the most important things, and then. So I think the tools that we have right now are pretty good, and they cover a lot of the things that the chapters are doing. So I think they're for now our focus is going to be to really mature those products and make sure that they're really reliable and really provide all the functionality that's needed. Since I came on board till now, I've just seen tremendous progress as far as the technology goes with the chapters, the tools that they have access to, and looking forward, with the coming of the NQA, broadband, all this fiber and wireless connectivity, the applications are just going to grow. And I think now, there's a lot more tools being made available through cloud services and third parties. Companies are providing more and more services that really can be taken advantage of us. So I mean, we don't really have to do as much anymore because a lot of these cloud services really meet our needs. We just take advantage of them. For instance, like the Google, all the Google apps, they're now part of the cloud services, and they're being made free, of charge to anyone that wants to use them. So those types of services are becoming more and more abundant, and we've been working with the chapters that want to utilize those services and get them used to using it and getting the skills. So I see a lot more of that happening. As more and more services come online, we hope to take advantage of those and really use them to our advantage, to further what we're doing out here, within DCD. So once the broadband gets built out, the access to the internet will vastly increase, and we can take better advantage of all these cloud services that are emerging. So it's looking really exciting.
All right, good morning. My name is Royman Willie, and I work with the Division of Community Development. My position here with the administration is IT. That's technical support for the computers. Mostly I go out to the chapters and I service the administrative computers and also the computers regarding the Gates Foundation. I make sure that they're up and running, they're virus free, and if they need updates and so forth, that's what I go out there and handle. Well, it's hard to say. When we first began switching out the old computers for the new ones through the Gates Foundation, I believe there was over 400. I don't really have the precise numbers. That was several years ago, but there are 110 locations, and the majority of those each have 4 computers. Sometimes they have 3, and others have opted to only choose 2 at the time when the original Gates computers were given out. The majority of them, I guess, are utilized, just to get on the internet and do searches, but our main concern was for the public, for them to be able to do their work or their school work. Maybe we do find that some of them file their unemployment monthly recertifications or weekly recertifications there. They're fully loaded with Microsoft Office Suite and all its, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and so forth. And there are kids' games on there, like the Magic School Bus, and also for the sight impaired, we have one of the profiles to assist with them. And let me see, what am I missing? They're on the older system, and on the newer ones now there is a Navajo learning tool on there. And it's kind of funny because there's this white lady on there, when you get your answer right, she goes, "Oh!" And you can see her hair blowing around. It's funny, totally. The websites for the chapters. Normally it begins with their name, say like Tuhatchee, then it'll be .nndes.org, and that is their website. The chapters administrate each of those. Like, they can put on their agenda for the week or the month. They can add in the notes for their planning meetings and so forth. That has a rundown of how that, say, Tuhatchee got its name, how it's, the Navajo name also, and just basically the people who are the presidents, the grazing committees, CSC and OSs. But those 2 titles, I believe, have changed now. And and also whatever the chapters want to put on there, photographs and so forth. It's all up to the chapter to manage those sites and put on what they want. And I know, just have a great day, and if you ever need my assistance, just give me a call. My direct number is 928-871-6162, and I'll be out there as soon as I can, but mostly we want the chapters and other entities under the division to bring their systems to us, and we can work on them here. We have high-speed internet, and everything is just a lot quicker here. The only lag time is you bringing your stuff to us.
My name is Sylvia Jordan. My title is Principal IT here at the admin, and I like to say technology services because there's more than one of us working, for the admin, and we work with all the chapters and the departments also. For the chapters, we do a lot of recommendation. We do go out to the chapters when we have the opportunity to clean out, update, help them upgrade, network any of their computers that they need. Whatever services that they request, we try to provide them, because we know it's difficult to find vendors that they can trust. And if they need recommendations on vendors, we usually do that too. But if it's something that we can fix and we have the time for it, of course it's going to be hard to service, 110 chapters, but we do the best that we can, and most of the time we're able to get some things done, and it always feels good to help them, because we know resources are, low. They don't have very many places they can go, so we really try to help them. What type of computer that they need, a typical setup for their admin, a typical setup that will handle their budgetary information, their financial information. So we are trying to standardize all of that, but this has been going on, for at least since I've been here, which is about 5 years. Yes, I was initially hired to help them complete their renewal, I guess you could call it, the replacement computers that they had gotten a grant for. So all of the older Gates computers that had been distributed in 2000 were being replaced with newer models and an updated operating system. So when I was hired, that was part of the project that I was working on. We did the configurations on there. We tried to get as much software as we could out there to let the public get familiar with it and have as much, as much as they could get out of it. The wind system, that was a large project, and we've been at it in the beginning, but we're kind of, it's not so much involving us because we're not directly involved into inputting the information. That relies a lot on the chapters, but we provide technical assistance, and if they need, us to help them, input it or help them to get set up, anytime we have like a conference entailing any type of training, we're usually there to help the chapters to get set up. If they have laptops that are not, up to date or need some work, we'll usually help with that also. I think just, a lot of the training and helping the chapters troubleshoot, helping them learn how to utilize their resources more effectively, looking at getting things, finding things for free that they can use instead of paying an exorbitant amount of money, which the chapters don't have, they could utilize in other ways. Now, I would just say, research. Anytime you're going to buy a computer, make sure you know what you want to buy. Don't pay so much money for something that you're not going to need or that's not going to be useful. Do a lot of research, take the time to find out what the best prices are, and utilize your money wisely.